It's time to talk Gonzaga basketball.
Get ready.
It's the Spokesman-Review Zags Insiders Podcast.
Here we go.
Here's Jim Meehan and Richard Fox.
Good morning. Happy Monday, everybody. Welcome back to the Zags Basketball Insiders Podcast. I'm Jim Meehan of the Spokesman-Review. Cover Gonzaga. Richard Fox alongside. He's the television analyst on Root, KHQ, and SWX broadcasts of Zags basketball. And an undefeated week for the Zags this time around, Foxy. That hadn't happened in a while. 2-0 to start off conference play. And the net rankings are out. They're updated every morning, actually. The Zags gained 9 spots to number 45 after beating San Diego on Saturday. I do not have one clue of how the formula works, the algorithms, what goes into that. But to gain 9 spots after beating San Diego, a little mystifying, but the Zags will certainly take it. You've got behind them, San Francisco is 46. St. Mary's all the way up to 50. They were in the 140s here, 3 weeks ago. So it can be done. You can move up and down, even apparently in conference play where everybody just expects Gonzaga's net ranking to drop. But they picked up ground this week. So we'll see if they can keep that going. They have Santa Clara on Thursday down in Santa Clara at the Levy Center. The Broncos are 103 in the net. Gonzaga in the bracketologies I looked at all over the map. Some good stuff here, Foxy. They've got I think they're ninth in one bracket, matched up against Colorado and Billy Greer. Mark Few's longtime friend, his former assistant coach. They're sixth, playing TCU or Florida play-in game. Florida coached by former San Francisco coach Todd Golden, TCU by Jamie Dixon, both known very well to Mark Few and company. And then another has them as an 11 seed versus BYU in Salt Lake City, the old WCC rivals. So, Foxy, who knows? But those would be some interesting matchups out of the gate, wouldn't they?
Yeah, they would. That BYU one would be interesting. They've done that before. I think was at Denver. They may have played them in Denver years ago when they had Jimmy Fredette. So, yeah. I mean, at this point, I just think for GU, it's just about stringing together a good run here of winning games, and we'll obviously jump into both the games over the weekend, but certainly a get right weekend. You're playing on the bottom half of the league and played really well against those teams, but it sure felt like this group needed a jolt of confidence. I think they may have gotten it, which might bode well for the rest of the year. Yeah,
I think if they can parlay that into certain areas on the court, that 3-point shooting and things like that, good things probably ahead. But let's look back at a big week around Gonzaga. You had the 2 victories. Gonzaga beats Pepperdine 88-60 in the arena. That was the Community Cancer Fund Classic. Raised money for the CCF, something that Mark Few has done throughout his career, going way back into the early 2000s with Coaches versus Cancer. Kind of hope that game continues. I thought it was a pretty cool vibe in there. There was a lot of folks that you don't get into the McCarthy. It's only 6,000. The arena's basically double that. I think that if they can keep that going, kind of like the old Ronald McDonald House Charities games they used to do here a decade or so ago. I think that could be a win all the way around when the students are out of town. You can kind of replace that lost energy of the McCarthy. Maybe you just move it about 1.5 miles to the arena for a game a year. What do you think?
Yeah, I do enjoy it, and I think it's a good indicator that they can support a game at the arena. Obviously, Kentucky last year was an unbelievable environment. But to fill that thing up for Pepperdine, I think is a really good indication of just the support that they have. Obviously, the cause, the Community Cancer Fund certainly, I think, increased the appeal of going to the game there. But if Gonzaga at some point does make a move to a larger conference. I would imagine, if you presume it's the Big 12 and they're playing Kansas, or someone at that level, they might want to play at the arena and get 12,000 folks in there to really boost up that home court environment. So I think it's fun. I think keeping things the same for too long gets stale, and I think for Gonzaga and the program, it's good to change things up. And having a game at the arena is certainly one of those things they can do.
Yep. On the court, the Zags took care of business, dominated inside. Graham Ike, another big night. Probably the better sign was how they defended Pepperdine's. They kind of have a big three. Excuse me, a big three down there. They've got a great guard, Houston Millett, Michael Ajayi, I believe it is.
Mm-hmm.
JC transfers about 6'7", is really having a heck of a year here. And he leads the conference in scoring. And then Javon Porter, who's just coming off apparently a meniscus surgery. So he's about 3 or 4 games into his comeback. All 3 of those guys can really score it. Zags shut him down pretty much from start to finish. Millett got his points, but I don't think he, shot it very well at all.
No.
They did a nice job on Porter, and Millett, or the JC transfer, I should say, he got his points, but it took a while. He was scoreless for a long part of that first half while the Zags were building a 20-point lead, and to defend on an individual basis against those threes, obviously a lot of help goes into that, and in the gaps and raking on drives, those kind of things. But I thought that was maybe even better than anything they did on the offensive end, which they were just fine on the offensive end.
Right. Yeah, I mean, Pepperdine shot under 33% collectively. They shot a decent percentage from 3, but a lot of those came late. Coming into the game, that trio of Millett, Ajayi, and Porter were shooting about 46% from the field. In that game, they shot 22, just really inefficient. Millett got to the line quite a bit. To your point, Ajayi hit some shots in the second half. I think at one point he was 1 of 6 from the field, hadn't done anything. And Porter, you could tell he was a kid just coming back from injury, and it looked like he was really forcing the ball on the offensive end. I mean, the reality is, it's the same story every year with Pepperdine. You and I have talked about it. They're seemingly always young, seemingly always very talented, but seemingly can never put it together. And I'm not going to venture why, but it's just interesting to see a team that has a lot of natural talent. I mean, all 3 of those guys are guys that would play some type of role at Gonzaga. I mean, that's the kind of talent that they are. And I thought Anderson, the transfer from Wyoming, probably had the best overall game for them. I just liked his pace and really was confused why he didn't have the ball more. It felt like he made good decisions when he had it. But Gonzaga, I don't know what you think, but what hit me first to start this year was I was really impressed with the defense for this group. I thought this is a team that first and foremost could be really dominant on that end with their ability to play big. They can rebound it at a high level. They were plus 10 against Pepperdine. And the offense was kind of a question mark to start the year, and it's been a question mark through non-conference. But I don't know if we've seen them play it that well defensively in a while. A big part of Pepperdine's struggles was just the activity level, Gonzaga's ability to switch a lot, and just the strength we had inside versus what they had. So I thought was really impressed. A function, certainly a function of it is just the way Pepperdine plays, which is really inefficient and kind of there's a lot of hero basketball, on the offensive side of the ball. But credit Gonzaga, I thought they had a big part to do with that, particularly in that first half. Yeah,
the defense has been, for the most part, really good all year.
Yeah.
But in the biggest games, they've struggled, kind of like the team in general, obviously. I think they gave up 46 to San Diego State, who is a good offensive team, but they make their living on the defensive end more than the offensive. UConn really didn't have a ton of trouble scoring against Gonzaga, especially that first half. Zags did a better job in the second half defensively, but UConn, they were pretty efficient, highly efficient. Obviously Purdue had a 45 point second half when they rallied to take down the Zags. So Those the defense has been there for the most part. I think Mark Few was very concerned about that after San Diego State, and then to do what they did with Pepperdine, that's a good step. Let's just go right into San Diego. Whereas the defense was great against Pepperdine, I really thought the offense was just on it from the get-go. What was it? Win the tip, one or two passes, dunk. Come back down. They're playing zones. San Diego plays a bunch of zones. Anton at the top of the free throw line, which how you break down a zone often is that middle penetration or middle pass to the top of the free throw line. Maybe one bounce, easy jumper, bang. Next time down, pass to the wing, a wide open three for Stromer. And that just kind of went on and on. They had their way with San Diego. I should point out San Diego missing Wayne McKinney III. He's kind of their elder statesman, third-year guy, runs the show, point guard, good scorer, physical guy, can guard a little bit. Not sure would have made a whole lot of difference. Obviously, a very good player, but the way the Zags were going offensively the other night, inside, outside, bunch of turnovers, transition points. The Zags got both parts of their game going. Offense on Saturday, defense on Thursday, and not bad on either side of the ball either night. But that offense was something the other night.
Yeah, it was interesting going into the game. You knew San Diego was going to play a lot of different types of defenses, and it's funny academically or in theory. I think that makes a lot of sense, particularly when you're the underdog, right? Change it up, kind of muck it up, force Gonzaga to really have to process what it is you're doing. But that's a really young team in San Diego. I mean, they played 4 freshmen, and I think a lot of those particularly early. Those breakdowns defensively was just guys not understanding what defense they were in, and Gonzaga did a great job of just taking advantage of that. And then the ball just moved over the weekend. Against San Diego, 27 assists to 9 turnovers. For the weekend, they assisted on almost 64% of their made buckets. Really took care of the ball against Pepperdine until late in the game. I think they got a little loose with it, which I would imagine is driving Coach Few crazy. Doesn't feel like these games are not necessarily finishing the way he probably would like, but so you're assisting, you're moving the ball. It was really evident against San Diego. It's interesting that during the non-conference, Gonzaga's assist-to-turnover ratio is about 1.3. Over the weekend, it was 1.8 or 1.96, almost 2. Just way better with the ball. Simple decisions. Nemhard was tremendous running the show on both nights, but particularly against San Diego. And I just liked how patient they were. It sure helps when you knock down the 3-point shot, which has obviously been a challenge. They were 10 of 23. That follows up a nice night against Pepperdine, but on the weekend shot 43% from the 3-point line. We were shooting less than 32 coming into conference play.
Yeah.
So I mean, it felt like the offense finally kind of came along for the ride, as it were.
Yeah.
And quite frankly, I would just take the average. The average between this week and a non-conference of 3 was 37%, and the assist-to-turnover ratio was 1.6. If they can land right there by the end of the year, that's going to be awfully helpful. But a really good performance. Much like Ajayi going in to Pepperdine in the first half, he struggled. It was the same thing with Deuce Turner. Could not get going, and by the time he started hitting some shots, the game was way out of reach. So I think the takeaway for me over the weekend, Jim, is just a really productive couple nights. And this is a team that I think really needed to see the ball go in the basket, but to get a little bit of that confidence, that juice back. Because that non-conference schedule was not only really difficult from a travel perspective and an opponent perspective, but I think kind of emotionally and psychologically, these guys, it's hard. I mean, it's not as if the effort hasn't been there, but you're applying that effort. You want to win, but you're not able to find a way. You lose a game on the road to UW you really shouldn't have lost. San Diego State probably feel the same way. A bad 5-minute stretch cost us the game. That can kind of linger in your mind. And I think getting into conference could not have come at a better time. And a really good opening weekend for the Zags.
Yeah, they're the floor game, Nemhard and Hickman, the backcourt, both games was very strong, and both needed it. They had the ups and downs, and not just shooting it. They needed the floor game, the assists. Things just ran so smoothly in those games. San Diego has some Pepperdine in them. They have some lengthy athletes that are going to be good if they can keep them together. They're just very young, but there's talent there. You saw them swatting shots at the rim quite a bit.
I thought that Porter kid looks really interesting. I mean,
yeah,
they list him at 6'8". He looked taller, and then the Lunga out of Romania.
Yeah,
he made a ton of young guy mistakes, but he had a couple plays where you're like, whoa! I mean, he's all a 6'6". He's a
playmaker. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, I like the pieces San Diego has. I think they're more organized on both ends. That's certainly a team. I'll be interested to watch them through the course of the year. If McKinney can come back and those young guys can get a little bit better, they might be kind of problematic when you get to the tournament.
Yeah. Well, the Zags have to turn around and play them in a week or two.
Yeah.
Down there, San Diego and Pepperdine. Pepperdine's Porter will be much healthier by then, more in the flow. Presume McKinney's back, so those might be a little tougher battles. But one other thing we should point out: Ben Gregg coming off the bench the other night was he really. I went back through and looked at his performances. I mean, he really doesn't have a lot of bad efforts off the bench, which that role cannot be easy. I don't care who you are. You want to start, you want to play a ton of minutes, but he handles that role about as well as you can. Although we asked him about it after the game, and he said he felt like he's had a mediocre start to the season. And I looked at him and I said, "You sure about that?" I don't believe that. I thought he's handled that role well for a couple of years now. But the kid on most any other team, especially in the conference and a lot of other programs, frankly, would probably see a lot of time. How tough is that role, and how well does Benny pull it off when he comes into games?
Well, I think he's been good all year. I agree with you, and we highlighted it on our call on Saturday night. The previous 8 games, he's been averaging 17 minutes a game, 9 points, 5 rebounds, shooting 56% from the field, 8 of 18. He doesn't turn it over.
Yeah. And
what's been interesting is he's been coming off the bench after Huff. That was not the case. We saw that against Pepperdine. It was not the case against San Diego. Yeah. And his impact was immediate. He had the 4 steals in the first half, but that initial steal really kind of created a big run for GU. He was only 2 of 6 from the 3-point line, but really efficient. Generally 8 of 15, rebounded the ball, the 4 steals, no turnovers. And I just think he doesn't hurt you. Mm-hmm. He doesn't make mistakes. And, I've been certainly a proponent for him to be playing more. I think he's certainly, Braden is very talented, and I think we'll have a really good non-conference or conference season, just given he's really the only other guy other than EK that can score on the low block. But I think Huff should be playing more and should be coming off the bench before him. And quite frankly, I think it'd be really interesting to start Gregg and bring Stromer off the bench. I think it would even out your rotations a little bit. You can bring Dusty in for either Gregg or one of the guards. Mm-hmm. I don't think they'll do that. I think at this point your rotation's kind of locked in, but he's been starter good in my opinion, and I was happy for him to see him. Career night from a points perspective, from a steals perspective. I think that's been coming for him, and my guess is he's going to have a pretty successful conference season. Whether or not he starts or not doesn't really matter, but he's going to have a big impact. Yeah,
he's always seems ready, and I can't imagine. Sometimes you're in at 16 minutes, sometimes it's 11. Tight game, maybe you're in the 8-minute mark, but he's always prepared for whatever the role is.
Yeah, and it's not just his production. He offers a different wrinkle, in my opinion, which is he's probably their most emotional player. You could see his emotion. This is a pretty stoic group, generally speaking. And his energy, when he comes in the game, the energy level goes up immediately for Gonzaga. And I think he brings an edge to him I certainly wouldn't look at Ben and think he's some enforcer type, but he has an edge to him and a toughness about him. I love that he brings that kind of change of pace with just his energy when he comes in the game. I think it impacts what they're doing in a positive way.
Yeah. Last I looked, I think he had 8 or 9 turnovers on the season.
Yeah, and he handles it enough. I mean, he's on the perimeter. He's got to put it down in the handoffs. He's got to make plays. He doesn't. He offers value add plays. He doesn't do anything to hurt you in what you're trying to do. He may have a game where he doesn't shoot it well, or a game where he doesn't score it a ton, but he's generally in the right place defensively. I think that lineup with he, Watson, and Ike on the front line is really effective because of Anton's versatility. But Ben knows where to be. If he generally, when he gets switched out to a smaller guy, he can hold his own. I've been very, very impressed with him, and I don't want to belabor the point, but certainly I think you're hitting the mark when you say that's a really hard role to be in. Mm-hmm. I think he has handled it very well. He's not. I don't get any sense or impression that he's grown frustrated and become a problem. I think he just is biding his time, waiting for the opportunity. When it comes, he's been ready most nights.
Yeah, he'll be just fine when it comes. I was blown away. He has, I think, 86 career games in a Zag uni.
Yeah,
blew me away when I looked that up. Because he came for that half a year.
Right.
Anyway, let's move on. So many other things going on around Gonzaga, along with the 2 games last week, and it all was kind of centered around the '99 team reunion. The team that made the Elite Eight kind of started this kind of the 25-year run the Zags have been on, and tournament every year, 2 national title appearances. It all goes back to that '99 team and the '94 team, '95 team. They were also recognized at a Northwest Passage event that's SR puts on. It was at the Myrtle Woolson Theater, Performing Arts Center, I guess it is, at GU's campus. That was Friday night between games. They introduced the '99 team to the arena crowd, got a nice ovation from the fans there. And then they introduced the '94 team, I believe it was, at the McCarthy on Saturday during a timeout. Jeff Brown, Wall, I think it was Dixon. I think Dixon was still around. I know he was back.
Scott
that group. Yeah. So really cool to see a lot of those guys back on campus. Some of them hadn't been on campus. I think Dixon was his first time back. And the reception they got, you could just, at that Northwest Passages event, you can still see the camaraderie that those guys have. When they talk about each other, when they talk about Mark Few or whoever, the trainer, Steve DeLong, anybody, you can still see kind of that friendship, camaraderie, culture that they had 25 years ago, 30 years ago, to this day, every time they talked on the microphone. What were your impressions of being around those guys as they came back this last week?
Well, it's awesome. I'm close enough to that '99 group, having graduated in '04, where I got to know some of those guys, pretty early after they finished up. And after the game on Saturday, I was able to meet up with those guys and spend a few hours with them. And it's just, the thing that stands out to you is they're just a great collection of people, more first and foremost. And they all have this incredible perspective about what that run was. And, none of them have their identity wrapped up into it at all. Yeah. And so it's actually really refreshing. And the conversations about the run are usually pretty lighthearted. And it's, I don't know, just a great group of people. It's fun to see guys like Axel Dench, Mark Spink, who don't come here all that often, but have great personalities and are just good people, Jim. I mean, honestly, it's just fun to be around them. And it is really special to see that connection has not withered at all. No. And it's very much when they're in the room together, it's like they're transported back to when they were 18, 22. And A lot of these guys are doing pretty well in life and have some serious jobs, and all of a sudden they're, I don't know if they're acting a fool, but they're getting pretty close to it, just having fun. And but yeah, I was happy I wasn't able to go after the game on Thursday, and then Friday had a previous engagement, but to be able to meet up with those guys Saturday was a lot of fun, and got to talk to them a little bit before the game on Thursday. And yeah, it's and it's I think the big takeaway on Saturday night was, for a lot of them, like, I don't know when the next time is we'll all be together.
Yeah.
So I just think they really embraced the opportunity, and I give those guys a lot of credit. They were pretty heavily involved in trying to organize, making sure everybody was here. And a big tip, a big shout out to the spokesman, certainly, and also the athletic department, who I think stepped up in some ways to make sure that the weekend could happen. So really happy for all of them. Hope to see them more frequently, and I'm confident I'll see them at least one or two at a time over the next however many years. But that's pretty cool to get them all together at least one last time.
Yeah, we talked about how confident and competitive that group was. I loved when Casey Calvary, said during the Northwest Passages event, I was actually disappointed we didn't win the national title. I thought we were going to win it. I mean, that's how, that's the mind of that guy. He was all in it to win it. And I doubt any of those other guys thought they were going to get beat the way they were going through the tournament and the magic they had. But what a mindset for a team that was only in its second appearance ever in the tournament.
Yeah, well, look, if you're going to list competitive guys at Gonzaga, Casey's going to be on the list. I'm not sure where he ranks, but he's certainly not towards the bottom of the list. But that's an interesting, that's that attitude, what is that perspective, that's not a guy 25 years later, how many years it is, reassessing the history of where they were at. They really believe that in that sense, that trickled into our years too, where, I mean, I remember in my senior year, we were highly ranked and all that, and I think we only lost a couple games, I think, to Stanford and St. Joe's, and we were 2 seed. We genuinely believed that we had a chance to go to a Final Four.
Yeah.
And we're crushed when we obviously got upset by Nevada. Those early teams had that chip and had that confidence, even though nobody else probably did. And that's a big part of making a run and winning a national championship, is having that belief. And that group certainly had it. And they were close. That Connecticut game was not a blowout. Certainly down the stretch was very close. And that was a very good team in UConn, obviously. But that's the nature of this deal. You can look back on any one of these losses, it feels like, for Gonzaga, and it's, generally speaking, other than a handful of blowouts, this goes right, or that ball doesn't go in, and all of a sudden, you might advance another round. That's the beauty and the cruelty of the tournament.
Yeah.
But that confidence was a foundational piece of this program. I don't know if it gets talked about enough. Those early groups really believed in themselves, and you have to have that to keep the run going.
Yeah. Let's move forward to this week. A big game coming with Santa Clara. Team's off to its first 2-0 start in 20 years in the conference. They had a couple of battles. They were tight throughout against Pepperdine on Saturday. They scored the last 6 points. I think they beat LMU by 10 or 11 in Los Angeles. So they got a couple of road wins already. And Herb Sendek, to his credit, has put together another good lineup. He has brought in an Arizona transfer, Adama Ball, that 6'7", wiry, shoots it very well. Not a volume shooter, but a good scorer. He's pretty efficient. I've got Carlos Marshall, 6'6", real strong, kind of off guard. Size inside, Johnny O'Neill, a transfer. Christoph Tilley, no relation, Killian. I think he might be German. I'm not sure. But anyway, they have some pieces. And on their floor, now they've had some good wins. I think they've played 4 Pac-12 schools. And they've had some kind of, games where you thought they would probably win and they didn't. But I think when this team is on, shoots the 3, I think they can be a handful. And you're going to have probably 5,000 or 6,000 of their closest friends hanging out Thursday night too. What do you make of this matchup? What's the key to it for Gonzaga to handle these guys?
Yeah, I mean, St. Mary's, that road game's always the toughest because it's such a small gym, as you know. but Santa Clara is a sneaky, difficult game to play. I mean, they will have. I'm not sure if their students are back by then. That'll have a real impact if they are there. But look, they started 6-0, beat WSU in Oregon, bad loss to Cal. Lost to Yale, who Gonzaga played. I think that's the only common opponent. Maybe they played, but they may have played Mississippi Valley State too. But they're very good offensively. Call it top 3 in the league. Score about 77 a game, shoot about 47% from the field. But they're the best 3-point shooting team in the league, shooting nearly 38%. And you listed off Ball, Marshall, Brian. Brian is 48% from 3, Marshall 47, and Ball shooting around 41, 42. And that's 6'5", 6'6", 6'7". O'Neal 6'10", the Tilly kid's 7'1". So they are enormous coming out of the gate. They've got a very big starting lineup. They're solid defensively. Both teams about 32% from the 3-point line, 41% from the field. They are not good with the ball. They have a negative turnover margin, and they're just okay on the glass. I would imagine for the Broncos, the first focus will be we cannot turn it over against Gonzaga. And we saw that over the weekend. Yeah. Gonzaga really got back to punishing teams in transition off those turnovers. So if Santa Clara can take care of the ball, they have enough firepower. And playing at home, you'd expect them to shoot, closer to their average than, maybe on the road. So we talked about it last week, who's tops in the league. I threw Santa Clara into that mix. This is a tremendous opportunity for them to get an early look at Gonzaga in conference play on their home floor. It's been a while since they beat GU. They nearly got it done last year on the road. Hickman hit a really big shot late. And Sendek's just did a really good job. I mean, he's had 2 years in a row first-round picks, Williams and then Pajemski. Ball was a pretty sought-after guy out of France. Came over young, a lot like a Yagi is my recollection. Mm-hmm. Never really could get his footing at Arizona. But he's got a lot of kind of pro characteristics. His size, he's really efficient. Only takes 10 shots a game or so. So he's a solid playmaker, rebounds it. I think it's a really interesting matchup, and they've got more depth than Gonzaga does. But their starting lineup's about as good as you're going to see in the league, and it's going to be a tough game for GU. I don't have any expectation they're going to go in there and roll them.
No, I think it's going to be their first true test in conference. I think
and only their second road game of the year, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah. And they better be on it. They better kind of carry how they played this weekend down there, because I think if they have some, dry spells that they were experiencing offensively, and then kind of defense that would be hit or miss in the bigger games, those would get you in deep trouble if you had those relapses again. So we'll get out on this, Foxy. 3-point shot. Mark Few gets asked about it after every game because they've been struggling. You can just see the gears are grinding when he gets that question. And this last week, they hit both games. They gave free tacos out. They hit 10 in that game. I think they were 8 of 19 against Pepperdine. The guards, Nemhard had a 4 for 5 in there. Hickman had a 4 for 5 in there. I know that the caliber of competition was not San Diego State or UConn or those type of teams, obviously. But I think to do that back-to-back games, I think to get that feeling like it's going to go in instead of I need to shoot this because I'm open feeling. I don't think they're world beaters from 3. Don't get me wrong, but I don't think they were as bad as those numbers. I think the law of averages is starting to equal out. What did you make of the 3-point line? And is it something they should be able to carry through a little bit better? Maybe not at the clip they shot it, but going through conference, that's something they're going to need. They're going to need it, or people are just going to whoop right into the lane on them and make them shoot. So what do you think?
Yeah, well, like I said, earlier, if they could just shoot the average between this weekend and non-conference, they're at 37%. That would be a massive win for this group collectively. I think that's a really good point, Jim, about where we were headed with respect to how teams are going to defend Gonzaga. I think if Santa Clara was thinking 2 weeks ago that we might just not guard Nemhard or give him a huge cushion, they might be reconsidering that a little bit. I still think teams will go under, but maybe not quite as they might not be quite so overzealous to do it.
Mm-hmm.
I like the type of shots that they took. I think Hickman has a little bit. He's a better shooter. I think he can take a little bit more. He can take more liberties in trying to get into it. I think he's better off the bounce, getting into his shot. Nemhard, to me, if he can catch and shoot and has the time to get his feet under him, I think he's going to shoot a decent percentage. I think a lot of the threes, sometimes he's coming off a screen and he steps into it, or it's transition. He's going a million miles an hour and he stops at the 3-point line. Those are really low, and the probability for him to knock those down, at least this year, are low. But against Pepperdine and generally against San Diego, they were catch and shoot. He was set at the 3-point line and he knocked him down. He took one late against San Diego, kind of off the bounce. I'll be honest, in my mind, I was like, "Oh no, don't take that one." He went in. But to me, it's the type of threes he takes in particular. It was good to see Hickman kind of get back to that. He's certainly their best shooter from the guys on the perimeter. And they don't have to take a ton of them. They didn't take a ton. Yeah. And I think that was important too. We've had some games over the course of the non-conference where they just took a ton of them and they didn't go in. The quality of the three to me with this group is just as important as anything else. And I thought they got quality looks. I was really happy to see Nemhard knock a few down. I think after the first one against Pepperdine, he looked up and said, "Thank God," or something to that effect. So I think it makes Gonzaga's hard to guard regardless. But if he and Hickman can knock down the 3-point shot, it makes it harder to guard those guys individually, and you can't necessarily just play off of Nemhard in particular. So certainly, I'm with you. There's no way Nemhard's going to shoot 15% all year. Statistically, it's not going to happen. He's not going to shoot as well as he shot this weekend, but is it somewhere in the middle? And I think we'd all take that.
Yeah, I think it's one of those deals too. When they shoot it from the perimeter, it makes life so much easier for EK and Watson and Stromer. When they score inside, post up, makes it so much easier, better shots for the guards. And that's what they've had for years around here. They've had the ability to do both. This team has the ability to do both. And if they can continue to knock down those threes, those open threes, not the forced threes, not the, end of shot clock threes, that number is right. 23 against San Diego attempts, 19 against Pepperdine. That's right in the wheelhouse. You don't want to be 30, 32. So let's see if they can keep that going. Hey, let's get out of here. Let's move on with our day. But hey, we thank everybody for listening out there. We will be back next Monday. We'll have this posted here in an hour or two, and then we'll be back next Monday with a look back at Santa Clara and the next road trip for the Zags. Thanks for listening. Take care.